Welcome, and thank you for joining me tonight. Find a comfortable position, let the day slowly fade away, and allow yourself to simply listen. There is nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to be, and nothing expected of you except to relax. As our story unfolds, you can follow every detail, or simply let the sound of my voice carry you gently towards sleep. Now let's begin. What if America's first election wasn't about choosing a president? It was something far more foundational, deciding what kind of nation we would be. Before George Washington, before even the idea of a presidency, there existed a struggle, a fight to define the balance between liberty and order, a battle for the soul of a new country. Imagine 13 colonies stretching along the Atlantic coast, but they weren't truly united. Each had its own quirks and ways of doing things. Some were more independent, while others clung tightly to British traditions. Rhode Island, for example, fiercely protected its autonomy, and Pennsylvania experimented with radical notions of equality. It's hard to believe now, but these weren't yet the unified states we know today. The Articles of Confederation, America's first attempt at government, sounded good in theory, but it quickly became clear that something was seriously wrong. They couldn't tax, they couldn't regulate trade effectively, and enforcing any laws felt impossible. States acted like independent nations, squabbling over borders and tariffs, creating a sense of national crisis. Could the experiment in liberty even survive? So they gathered in Philadelphia, delegates from each state, tasked with fixing what was broken. The Constitutional Convention wasn't always pretty. It was a messy process of debate and compromise. They grappled with fundamental questions. How much power should the federal government have? How do you balance liberty with order? And who gets to decide? Reaching an agreement wasn't easy. There were deep divisions. The Great Compromise, creating both a Senate where states have equal representation and a House based on population, was hard-won. Then, there was the thorny issue of slavery, settled by the infamous 3/5 clause. It's impossible to ignore how contentious those early decisions truly were, shaping our nation in ways we still grapple with today. But even after the Constitution was drafted, enthusiasm wasn't automatic. People remembered what it was like living under British rule, taxes without representation, laws imposed from afar. So, when asked to surrender some autonomy to a stronger central government, many were understandably wary. Could we trust this new power not to become another tyrant? That's when the Federalist Papers appeared, a series of essays designed to persuade states to ratify the Constitution. James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay wrote under the pseudonym Publius, arguing eloquently for a stronger union. Listen to this excerpt from Federalist Number 1. It has been proven that republics are more stable when they are large. The early votes were critical and surprisingly swift. Delaware ratified first, followed quickly by New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut. That initial momentum gave hope to the Federalists, but it also stoked fears among those who opposed a strong central government. The fight was far from over. Are we to become slaves again? That was the question echoing across Virginia as Patrick Henry rallied opposition. His speeches were legendary, fiery and passionate defenses of states' rights and individual liberties. He argued that a powerful central government would inevitably trample on the freedoms they'd fought so hard to win. What did he truly fear? Newspapers became the battleground, filled with contrasting arguments, accusations and defenses. One paper championed the Constitution, another warned against its dangers. It was a truly vibrant public debate, a collision of ideas shaping the future of America. The nation held its breath, waiting to see which side would prevail. The fight wasn't over after Pennsylvania ratified. Massachusetts, a hotbed of revolutionary thought, was next, fiercely divided. Federalists like John Adams championed a strong national government, while anti-federalists led by George Mason feared it would trample states' rights and individual liberties. Town squares became battlegrounds, political rallies pulsed with fervent debate. Imagine the air thick with shouting, pamphlets flying. It was truly unsettling for those trying to build a new nation. The tension in Massachusetts reached a breaking point. The state legislature found itself locked in an impasse, unable even to vote on ratification. It was a stark reminder of how fragile this whole process truly was. Could the fledgling nation survive such deep political fracturing? Some feared that without swift resolution, the entire project would collapse under its own weight, reverting back to the fractured states they'd fought so hard to unite. Thankfully, compromise often arises from conflict. Within Massachusetts, leaders recognized that the deadlock was unsustainable. Promises began to surface. A Bill of Rights would be added later, explicitly protecting individual freedoms. It wasn't a perfect solution. Resentment and distrust remained among many anti-federalists, but it paved the way for ratification, a hard-won victory bought with concessions. Let's take a step back to understand how this election of electors actually worked. Each state got to decide its own method, and there was no national standard. Often it meant that state legislatures dictated who those electors would be, effectively bypassing any popular vote. It's hard to believe now, but the people weren't directly choosing the president yet, not even close. New York, another crucial swing state. Alexander Hamilton, ever the pragmatist, recognized its importance and launched an aggressive campaign to sway public opinion. But he wasn't alone. Powerful voices like George Clinton fiercely opposed him, arguing that a strong national government would benefit the elite at the expense of ordinary citizens. The battle for New York's soul was just beginning. The New York Ratifying Convention. It was chaotic. Imagine weeks of endless debate, arguments flying back and forth like volleys in a war. People were deeply entrenched on both sides, making compromise seem impossible. The future of the Constitution hung precariously. Could they find common ground before it was too late? Hamilton, though, was a master strategist. Using his sharp intellect and powerful rhetoric, he slowly began to chip away at the opposition's arguments. He forged alliances, sometimes uneasy ones, to build support. It wasn't about brute force. It was about persuasion and compromise. A delicate dance with the fate of the nation on the line. And then, ratification. New York approved the Constitution by just 3 votes. 3. Can you imagine how close we came to rejecting it? It was an astonishingly narrow victory, a testament to the deep divisions within the nation and the power of persuasion, and perhaps a little bit of luck. North Carolina and Rhode Island remained holdouts. They were skeptical, rightfully so. Their concerns centered around fears of centralized power and a lingering, uncomfortable truth: slavery. The issue was too complex to ignore. Any attempt at ratification would require addressing these fundamental anxieties. Persuading North Carolina meant tailoring the message, emphasizing economic benefits and reassuring them that states' rights would be protected. It wasn't a one-size-fits-all approach. Each state had its own unique fears and aspirations, and it's this understanding, this willingness to listen and compromise, that ultimately brought the nation together, however imperfectly. Rhode Island, a state born of radical ideas, they'd forged their own republic, fiercely independent and rejecting any notion of a stronger national government. They initially refused to participate in this election process. It's hard to imagine now, but their absence highlighted just how fractured the new nation felt. Eventually, even Rhode Island came around, and with North Carolina joining them, the final pieces fell into place. North Carolina and Rhode Island finally ratifying, that meant the election of George Washington was all but guaranteed. But how would this first presidential election actually work? It wasn't as simple as a popular vote, not yet anyway. Each state would choose electors, individuals pledged to represent their state's interests, and these electors would then cast ballots for the candidates they believed best suited to lead. Imagine the scene, those electors gathering, solemnly casting their votes. It was a unique system. Each elector got 2 ballots, 2 chances to choose a leader they believed worthy. This wasn't about popularity contests. It was meant to ensure that someone truly qualified and respected would take the reins of this fledgling nation. They understood this was a monumental moment, a gamble on an untested republic. The announcement came. George Washington unanimously elected, a landslide victory that seemed to seal the nation's destiny, at least for a moment. But the election of John Adams as vice president, well, that's where things started getting complicated. It exposed an early fault line, the growing tension between Federalists and those who leaned towards a more Republican vision. Historians today recognize this election as a cornerstone of American democracy. It wasn't perfect, of course. The system was unconventional, but it provided a framework for future elections. But even with Washington at the helm, what challenges would arise? What divisions would deepen and threaten to tear apart this fragile union? The pairing of Washington and Adams, it seemed like an ideal union at first glance. But almost immediately, disagreements surfaced within Federalist circles about which direction the new nation should take. The seeds of ideological division were sown right from the very beginning, a quiet murmur that would soon grow into a roar. Enter Alexander Hamilton, brilliant, ambitious and convinced he knew how to build a prosperous nation. He began advocating for a powerful central bank, believing it was essential for economic stability. But this clashed dramatically with Thomas Jefferson and others who championed an agrarian ideal, a vision of America rooted in farming and individual independence. Jefferson's opposition to Hamilton's plan solidified. He feared it would concentrate power in the hands of northern merchants at the expense of southern farmers. It wasn't just about economics. It was about a fundamental difference in what America should be. This clash, it set up a major political showdown, one that threatened to unravel everything. The bank will enrich speculators. It's an engine of aristocracy, Hamilton thundered. He delivered impassioned speeches defending his vision, a nation built on credit and commerce. But he also ignited intense public debate fueled by accusations of elitism and even whispers of monarchical tendencies. The air crackled with disagreement. Mr. Hamilton's policies betray the principles of Republican virtue. Jefferson fired back, a blistering critique that argued Hamilton was sacrificing individual liberty at the altar of economic power. The political tensions escalated rapidly, threatening to boil over into something far more dangerous. What would Washington do to keep this nascent nation from tearing itself apart? The pressure was immense. Hamilton and Jefferson were locked in increasingly public ideological battles. It wasn't just about policy anymore, but fundamentally different visions for America. Washington felt this acutely, attempting to mediate and find common ground, yet the chasm seemed to widen daily. He worried deeply that their disagreements would tear apart this fragile experiment he'd fought so hard to create. Could a nation survive such internal strife? Then came the Whiskey Rebellion. Farmers in western Pennsylvania, feeling unfairly burdened by a federal tax on whiskey, their primary source of income, began to openly defy the government. They saw it as another form of tyranny, just like what they'd fought against with Britain. It wasn't merely about booze. It was about representation and economic survival. Would this new nation crush dissent or nurture its roots? Washington responded decisively, personally leading troops westward, nearly 13,000 militiamen. A powerful message. The federal government would enforce its laws. Jefferson argued it was a mistake, that overwhelming force would only alienate citizens and fuel resentment. But Washington believed inaction would signal weakness and invite chaos. Was he preserving order or sowing seeds of division? The rebellion was swiftly suppressed, yet the victory felt uneasy. The sheer display of force highlighted just how fragile American unity truly was. It reopened old wounds, the fear that this new republic might simply become another form of oppressive government. Could they find a balance between federal power and individual liberty? Historians still debate Washington's actions. Did that forceful response ultimately strengthen the nation by asserting federal authority, or did it weaken it, breeding resentment and distrust? There's no easy answer, just a constant reminder of the complexities inherent in leadership, especially during those formative years. The rise of partisan newspapers only exacerbated tensions. The Federalists and Republicans weren't just debating policies but attacking each other's character, spreading rumors, and inciting animosity. It was a constant barrage in print, shaping public opinion and fueling political polarization. How would this early form of media impact democracy? Washington confided his anxieties to John Adams. He wrote privately, "The spirit of party is the most baneful foe to any republic." He feared those divisions would unravel everything they'd accomplished. A nation built on unity and compromise. He saw the writing on the wall. Could this experiment in self-governance withstand such relentless animosity? Congress struggled to manage this growing partisan conflict, establishing rules and procedures, ways to debate, ways to compromise, to keep things from spiraling out of control. These early legislative battles laid the groundwork for many processes we still use today, a testament to their ongoing effort to refine American governance. As Washington prepared to retire, he knew setting an example was crucial. A peaceful transfer of power. His farewell address warned against the dangers of factionalism, urging Americans to prioritize national unity above all else. It's a legacy that continues to resonate today, but will those warnings be heeded? These early struggles, the Whiskey Rebellion, the partisan press, Washington's anxieties, shaped America for generations to come. The challenges they faced echo even now, prompting us to reflect on what lessons remain relevant today. But this fragile experiment in self-governance, will it endure?